Are you able to see the slides are there? Brilliant. So today I'm doing a lot of my presentation on Mentimeter. So it's totally up to you if you want to be viewing it on this call or just heading over to the Mentimeter link. Hopefully you've got the details up here that will help you along to join, and that I think that detail will be there the entire time. But if you have any problems, I can find a link for you all. So introducing myself, I'm Romo. I work as a civil servant within the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in England. I've spent 3 years as a civil servant as of a couple of weeks ago, so hitting my work anniversary recently. I started out as a culture lead in the strategic core of the organisation. I adopted a portfolio of leading as an Innovation Champions Network lead, and I've also shuffled in the same time whilst retaining my role as an Innovation Champions lead over into strategic policy in another part of the organisation for farm animal health and welfare. And that at that point, my time split to 70% strategic policy and 30% Innovation Champions lead. So a little bit of pressure to prioritise time and really learn how to continue a network and build a network whilst holding 2 portfolios at once. Other things, I'm based in Norwich. I have a passion for live music, foods, skiing and paddleboarding. I'm very visual and creative thinker, so I like to use collaborative tools, and I found out the other day in another call that you could do some really fun things with Mentimeter, which is why I'm using it today. So if it goes wrong, this is my first time using it, but I'm not too bothered. I've been part of calls before, and I think it's a really fab tool. And the main thing that attracts me to it is the fact that you can use AI to sort things in real time. So we'll have a go at that today. I'm also interested in your views today. This is going to be a very interactive call. Hopefully you don't mind. And I'm really interested in hearing about your professions and skills. So either reach out to me through this call on the Q&A or directly, and I'm more than happy to share my details afterwards to chat further. So that's a bit about me. I would like to know a bit about you, and there's just a couple of questions. The first one is, have you built a Champions Network? And it's not a requirement to be on this call. You don't have to have done it, but it'd be interesting to see where we're all at. I'm not sure how many people are on this call, so I'll watch the numbers tick up. So if you know the amount of people on the call, that'd be handy. So it's looking like we don't have a lot of people that built a Champions Network, which is brilliant. Hopefully this might inspire you to start one. I don't know, but at least by the end of this call, you'll know a few things about what I've done, what sustains network, what are some of the skills you need if you wanted to start, and a few other things that I'll touch on. So let's go ahead. And then for those who have run your network, how long have you run it? For me, I am based at probably now the 2 to 3 year bracket, having started kind of building it quite a while ago, but launching it fairly recently, just over a year ago.
And if you're not directly on Mentimeter and would like to kind of take part, then you can also drop any kind of comments into chat as well, and we can kind of read those out as we go. So if you have started a network and you're not on Mentimeter and you want to say that, yeah, I've been doing it for 5 to 10 years, then you're welcome to drop that into the chat function too.
Thank you. So someone here has been running a network for 3 to 5 years. That's brilliant. There's a lot of, I kind of made these categories up, so don't take them too seriously, but having run for around 2 to 3 years of like being able to present this and have to retrospectively think about what I've done, I can't imagine what that is for anyone who's done more than me, because it was quite a journey just trying to simplify my thoughts down of where I've been the last couple of years. So
We've
where
just to say we've got a couple of comments in to say James, he's been running one for almost 3 years, and Hanan has been running one, and I know this, for 5 to 10 years. So we've got some experience on the line there.
Oh my goodness, I want to pick your brains. Brilliant. Okay, so where did I start? I started as a culture lead, as I said, in the strategic core of the business, which had a focus on transformation. So I feel like these were good grassroots to be building in. I was in this space surrounded by change experts who were directly working with senior leaders. Some of the benefits of this, if you're sat in a space like this, is that you kind of have less boundaries to leap to reach the people you need to talk to kind of impart the change or get the sponsorship. Really beneficially, I started with a case study of a previous network that had been stood down, and they'd also set out a need for a new approach and some recommendations. So it was a really, really good case study to pick up and just think about and discuss with the previous owners and members, you know, what happened and what do you think about this? So it already had like a mini network in place, and certainly lots of learning to pick up. I also started as the only resource towards the network and kind of remained this way, but we'll get into that. I haven't found any issues too much with this because it really like pushes you into the deep end and standing on your own 2 feet and kind of pulls you into a role where you're leaning on a lot of leadership tools and being very creative with your time. So really good career experience, really, if you're gonna have a look into this. It's not a bad place to start, I don't think. So it'd be good for those who are on the call who have run a network, and even those who haven't but might have been thinking about starting to run a network. How often is this coming across your mind, and how often are you reflecting on your lessons learned and looking forward again? Cool. Brilliant. And have you got any response in the chat? I'm having some problems actually snapping open the Zoom call, Zena, so I can't interact with it, unfortunately.
No comments in the chat as yet.
Brilliant. So some people are really keen, thinking fortnightly-ish, every month and every few months. That's good to know. And only when prompted to. I would put myself probably in this sphere and in about once a year. And really, I think it's because I have this dual role of running strategic policy and running a champions network. It's like finding the space to sit down and reflect. But having put together this call, I found it really beneficial. You know, I'm looking to develop my career consistently, and actually being forced into, hey, there's this opportunity to talk about what you've done. I would really recommend it. So for those who want to kind of up your frequency of thinking about a network, I would strongly recommend it. So next, what were the building blocks, my building blocks? Where did I start? So I've already discussed this. So I did pick up a paper of lessons learned from a previous initiative. And I also looked into other networks around me that were really thriving, and in my organisation and even cross-government in the UK, there's a really thriving continuous improvement cross-government network. So I had a chat with those people and I was like, well, you've been running for years. Can you kind of impart your knowledge? Can you please tell me a little bit more? Because up until this point, I'd never built a network. This was brand new to me. I had to start somewhere. And all I could do was have a look at some really skilled examples and also ask and test their challenges and see if I could build with a better base. And the reason why this slide is very much a sandpit is because that's what it was. I think I was toying around, playing with new concepts, and so I don't think this was a solid base, but I feel like my instincts took me in a fairly decent direction. So what helped was some right to left planning. Now, right to left planning, if you haven't heard of it, is essentially putting yourself in the future and asking yourself, what would good look like? If I've delivered this network really well, what would that look like? And so that's all the way over in the right, and the left is, well, how am I going to get there? And you kind of go from the future and place your steps left to right of, okay, how am I going to achieve this? So that just kind of gave me some principles that I wanted for the network, what I felt would look good, and help me kind of measure along the way of like, am I actually heading in this direction? And what I will say is that you don't have to kind of stick to that. It's the principles that you're building upon. And if you need to change direction, that's not a problem, but it's good to kind of know and be able to communicate what you're trying to do, especially with your network members later on once you've launched. That right to left planning led me to write a terms of reference, and a terms of reference along with a proposal for senior sponsorship and the principles of change. So what was going to be different from the last network that I picked up and moving forward. Terms of reference, hopefully you've heard about it, but essentially sets out what is the problem you're trying to solve, what's the purpose, what is this network going to do, what's some of its governance, maybe some of what it's looking to measure, how regularly the network will meet, and how regularly it will talk to senior leads for updates. So that was good. It's kind of like it's like work planning in lots of ways, but the main thing that you always take forward from the terms of reference is the ability to describe your network in a high enough level of detail that the people that come forward to join actually know where they're landing. So it's a really important key document and is still a building block of any network that I'd build moving forward. So the proposal for sponsorship was saying, hey, we've existed before. We know that there were all these issues. People were running out of ideas. It was feeling like the same people were feeding in. How are we going to freshen this up? And what are we going to do? Part of that proposal for me was running an innovation event the same year that I launched. So essentially getting the sign off from leadership of like, hey, we want to start talking about innovation across the organization. And I think the vehicle in which we do this and launch the network is to celebrate other people's work that's already happening in innovation, that hopefully attract some people forward to kind of form. And it's probably a community of interest, but that's what we proposed. And we took that to the permanent secretary, so the head of our organization, and she loved it. And the main thing about it is that it got her thinking. We set out the principles, we set out what the terms of reference were, and she's like, oh, but what about this idea? And it's a foundation in which your leadership can kind of see the future of it and build upon it. So that led to sponsorship and sign off. Very luckily, in my case, we had the previous sponsor, the previous network, was still keen to be on board. And so we took the same proposal to him ahead of a proper senior sign off, and he was more than happy to join and is still the sponsor. And if you can get that, then you've got someone who's already bought in, but is also kind of staying in a space where they want to see thriving. And it's good to know that you've got someone that's interested. So I've got the proposal, I've got the sign off. What did I do next? The main thing was creating the platforms for others to celebrate their work and connect. So part of that was the event, but it's also like, well, where do they go afterwards? How do they talk to one another? What do they do? in my organization, we use Microsoft Suite, so building team spaces and setting up shared mailbox to kind of take queries, and setting up networking calls to actually have people start meeting each other and just creating that space. And then there was a whole bunch of comms and engagement and the launch. Again, it was the event, but it takes up a lot of the time of this role, and I'll get into that later. So with that in mind, and for those who are on the call who've run a network, but even if you haven't, what were the building blocks or key elements of creating your network? And for those who haven't,
Again, I was going to say you're welcome to put it into chat if you haven't got your Mentimeter open.
yeah, for those who haven't built a network, what do you think? Where would you start? What would you do? Use your instincts. What feels like the logical steps sat in your organization or in your business? Who would you talk to? What would you build? What would you write? What would you share? So we've got a couple of responses coming in on the Mentimeter. So getting buy-in from higher grade stakeholders and other members of staff. Comms is key. Give people time to engage. Creating a space for people who wanted to be there and not one where they had to be there. Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. Arriving with much more enthusiasm. My reflection on that is, you can bring people to an initiative, but you can't make them care. And I totally think that statement is reflective of that. We've got sponsorship, share why you're doing it, the goals, getting the right people, finding people who will be champions, identifying the need, and clearly naming the problem the organization needed to fix. Yeah, it does. I'd say the need was kind of set out for me before, and I wonder how I would start if I didn't have if I had a blank slate. All I knew is that the senior leaders in my organization really valued networks in the organization, and they really knew that there's so much that you could harness from them. So there's kind of this cultural driver within the organization that was saying, like, look, you set up a network, you set up the space, you bring forward the people who are interested in that subject area, and it really builds a community where it's greater than the sum of its parts. People are reaching out to one another and solving problems that the usual business as usual isn't going to. And a solid business case on the way forward. Yeah, I'd say if I was to start again, I'd probably include a business case mainly, and I'll show you next, because it sets out the spending and maybe some budget. Have we got any responses in the chat, Zena?
Not specifically, but I was just thinking also when we were talking about, who to tap into and your comment around networks, I was thinking there could be excellence champions, happiness champions, change agents, youth councils, loads of different kind of networks that if you can tap in and engage those individuals, you almost expand your innovation champions network overnight too.
Yeah, absolutely. I ended up reaching out to change practitioner networks, change and improvement, continuous improvement, existing technology innovation networks, learning what they do so as not to duplicate, but also learning what what gaps I could fill, what my secret sauce would have been running the network, like what extra am I bringing, and then kind of testing and garnering the appetite for that in adding it in. Making it enjoyable, fun, it can't be a hassle to be a part of. Yeah, absolutely. Part of my terms of reference for the network is that, and it's up to you, because part of this presentation is about building a champions network and the benefits of it. But the main thing for me, especially in an organization that is focused on its objectives and outcomes, and yes, does have space for people to do corporate contributions above and beyond their work and on the side of their desk. Main thing for me is reassuring people that there is no real time commitment to the network. It's use it as and where you wish. If you're raising innovation ideas, or if the network is looking for feedback, you might be able to give a minute, you might be able to have 30 minutes chat, you might be able to join a network call and just discuss how you're working. And it's setting out the benefits to the members, like, look, this is not a full-time job, you are simply joining a network where people have like-minded people, may want to discuss their ideas, and you might have that inkling from all the way across your other side of the world that they haven't seen. So think of the value that you can bring, and where possible, do dip your toes in. And even if you don't have the skill set, join anyway, because there's plenty of soft skills that I'm sure you all have that do kind of translate themselves into the help that is actually needed for some innovation ideas and championing spaces. And it certainly brings diversity of thought when you have the layman view, because you're really challenging the subject matter experts and saying, actually, no, I don't understand this, and you haven't spelled it out clearly. And that helps you communicate ideas way better when you have someone who's coming in totally fresh. So brilliant. Okay.
There is one comment that's come into the chat now, which was from Hanan. Diversity, different cultures, different challenges, it all kind of brings into that melting pot to create the best ideas as well. So making sure your network is full of that kind of diverse group of individuals and thinking as well.
Absolutely. I would recommend, if you have got equality, diversity, inclusion network or networks across the organization, you can certainly advertise in those spaces. And even if you've got an existing idea and those networks aren't necessarily members, you can still consult them. And they do welcome kind of new ideas coming across them for their own testing. So if you do have that around, I would recommend it. Okay, next slide. We've got, what did my journey look like? And I'll explain why this changed. So Zena will be familiar with this one. I presented it in one of the other Innohive calls, Innosphere calls. What did it look like?
Yeah, cross-government COP.
Yeah, cross-government one. So what I did, I reviewed, rethought, and redesigned the previous network. I then relaunched it at Innovation Week, which is a week worth of events, which led me into a period of ideation and network growth. So I'd invited people along to kind of put forward their ideas, and I spent a hell of a lot of time raising the opportunity and saying, hey, this network now exists, come along, come and join our network calls, come and talk. And that was really brilliant, because what we had was people bringing forward ideas, and then a space in which they were then discussing their ideas to solve with like genuine cross-organizational. And so I operate within DEFRA group, so I sit within the department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, but our organisation spreads to arm's length bodies, including, you know, Environment Agency, Natural England, smaller bodies that may build up this picture of DEFRA group. And it was kind of the first time that there was a grassroots kind of initiative that attracted that full suite of stakeholders. So it was really interesting to see, having sat in organizational strategy and knowing how hard it was from a higher strategic level to engage those stakeholders, to be able to do it in a grassroots way where you had people joining the calls from all these different organizations is really inspiring to see how much kind of expertise and diversity of thought there was. And it just goes back to like how much value you can get out of people and joining people up across boundaries. So that was a brilliant period for me. And then having built like a semblance of a network that was taking a lot of time to keep it on its feet, I had people come forward and say, well, look, you know, you did Innovation Week, are you going to do that again? And the curse of events is once you run one, lots of people want a lot more of it and very soon. So I had people come forward and I started to virtually team with others who were really interested in potentially running another event and delivering an event of greater value than the previous one, which is where we talk about scaling. And so we had this baseline, we ran an event, we know how many people it attracted, we knew how many sessions and speakers we had. And a huge part of that scaling element was the going on and network mapping and understanding the organization more. So increasing our innovation maturity in a way where we could start spotting and identifying dedicated innovation groups, teams, and individuals that could then build that next event, which is what led to Innovation 2024. So we went from, oh God, I don't know the stats now, but we went from maybe running 20 sessions to running 60. And we went from something like 10 speakers to over 100, all in the space of a year. And from 3 organizations delivering it to, I think, 15. So that's it, it's just a success story. And I'm, you know, having gone through that sequence, taking the learning and moving forward and scaling, it's amazing what the art of the possible is when you just maybe add 1 or 2 more people to your team and what skills they bring to the table and capacity, even if again it's on the side of their desk to do it. It's really important to join up with other people. And as someone who started as the only resource, it's like my #1 recommendation is go ahead, virtual team. They do not need to be sat with you. They do not need to have the same skill set. The more diverse, the better. So that's what my journey looked like. But if I could start again, what would I add to the building blocks? So I told you my roots were very much sandpit. I was playing around. I hadn't built a network before. If I was to build a network along with the terms of reference, along with creating those spaces, I would start network mapping way sooner. I'd spend 80% on the research and 20% on the delivery. And network mapping was that huge tool for scaling. And so you could start scaling way earlier or start your ambition sooner if you network mapped. And again, with teaming, your capacity grows, your diversity across the organization and knowledge across the organization grows just by linking up and maybe spending 10 minutes a week checking in with people, seeing what they're seeing. And sometimes that grows into more time, and I think that's okay, but it's having a purpose of why you're teaming, what the shared ambition is, and getting your mind on a page. So what I used was, what was it? A mural board. We just had an absolute mega board by the end of it, just sharing notes, ideas. Well, started thinking about branding, started thinking about stakeholders, started thinking about the themes that we could touch on, how we can kind of connect people. Started even thinking about the ecosystem of innovation from the viewpoint of DEFRA as an organization, and kind of what are our central contacts, who are the teams that currently exist, what are our cross-government contacts, what are some of the levers and tools that we can use, and started mapping that too. Defining innovation, really key. So if you're looking to build a champions network on innovation, for me, the reason this is here is because my organization is huge on science innovation and even technology innovation. And different parts of the organization just take those definitions. I came into the role as a culture lead, and really could see kind of a huge range of types of innovation, from smarter ways of working to technology to science, and kind of laying the ground for this. Like, what type of innovation are we even talking about when I'm talking about the Innovation Champions Network? This is really key to engage senior leaders in your organization. If you don't know what type of innovation or type of network that you are running, it becomes harder for them to engage when it comes to their knowledge on their subject area, and thinking, is this going to be worth my time? Is this touching on my side of the world? So we went ahead and defined innovation with that span from technology to science to smarter ways of working. And that unlocked a whole load more doors as soon as we were able to say it like concisely. Because before you kind of, I was experiencing, this doesn't feel like me. It feels like you're just focusing on this one thing. And it really switched over just maybe a handful of months later. The same stakeholder that we were reaching out to before then engaged and then sponsored the space. So it's amazing how much defining your space helps with bringing people on board. Budget. If you're going to run an event, you can totally do it for free. I did. But in terms of scaling and capability of kind of running something bigger, better, more hybrid, more inclusive, getting that technology, getting that event planning skill set from potentially a partner that can help deliver it with you. Budgets are needed, and it really does help. So going from 700 participants to 6,000, that's the leap in my experience. So setting out what you need for your budget, seeing if anyone else in the organization can do it for free beforehand. So who are your service providers? Can you potentially get some sponsorship from them? Are they willing to come along for free? That's where you save money, but where you can really add value is in the planning and delivery. And I would also start with a proposal for dedicated innovation resource. The main thing for this is ring fencing the need and actually agreeing with leadership that the innovation is really key for your organization. And it sounds crazy to say, you know, like, I need to convince you that innovation is key for an organization, but genuinely, if there isn't money behind the resource, and it's not in the business planning, and it's not in the strategic planning, and it's not in a business case, it could just be cut overnight. And it's about ring fencing that time, that space, and setting the principle that it is going to be really important. So if I'd start again, I would do all that research, have a look, kind of set out what the organization looks like, and then I'd put a proposal forward of like, can you back this with budget, with resource? And if the answer is no, that's something that you can say, hey, if it's not now, cool, this is everything that I've learned. I'm going to put that to bed, and I'm going to pick up a different project. Because as soon as you're on board with a champions network or a network in general, you're pretty much there until it can stand on its own 2 feet. And a year on, I'm still not, I still don't feel like I could step away from it. So there's a lot of work involved that is incredibly valuable, incredibly rewarding. But it would help if there was dedicated resource and that, that security. So what could the journey look like with all those changes in place? A few things shuffle around here. The visual changes. So I'd review the lessons learned. I would team early. I would map early and consult early, and continue on with my rethinking and redesigning with a lot more knowledge in place before I launch. Then take it forward to propose, gain leadership, sponsorship, and budget, and then plan an event space to relaunch. For me, I found great value in innovation or running events, so that's where I'd go. But an event doesn't have to be your launch pad, but I do really recommend it because it's a space to really celebrate what you've got. And then you go on to review, sustain, and scale, and kind of start the cycle again. So that's what it'd look like if I changed the way that I started. So if that's inspiring to you, feel free to take my lessons learned forward. Going on to a role as a network lead, what skill set might you need to create a network? And think of this exercise as writing a job description for running a network. You know, what skills, what knowledge, what expertise do you think you might need to run a network and create a network? Open-minded, innovation mindset, communication, knowledge of organization, optimism, resilience. Resilience again, being intentional, bouncing back from setbacks when things don't go as planned. Tina, have we got anything in the chat?
Yes, we've got a couple more communication skills, effective communication, and also needs to be intentional, which I think is a good comment.
Brilliant. Understanding the topic, communication, enthusiasm, knowledge of why you want to network in the first place, good communication. This is good, and it's a sign that you're all thinking in the right space, at least from my point of view and what I'd say. So keep those ideas coming in. I'm glad no one said you need a really, really specific skill, because in my opinion, the skill set you need is soft skills. And some hard skills come in, you know, your statistical analysis of how things are getting on, doing that data measure, doing a little bit of analysis. But really, for me, it's about the soft skills. You don't have to be any grade in the organization. I started off and still am below middle management as a network lead. So skills and experience. Now, what helps is knowing the organization, but you can learn that along the way. What you'll want, soft skills. I just took a picture off the internet because I didn't have to recreate it. Communication, problem solving, being adaptable, having an emotional intelligence, kind of knowing how to connect with people, connecting with people who might even challenge you on what you're doing, and really asking you, is this going to be worthwhile, so that you can refine your pitch and develop it. Being creative, for me, this shows up in branding, in running events, in the way that you communicate, in thinking differently about how things can be delivered. Teamwork and collaboration couldn't be more important. And leadership, you can lead at any level of an organization. You can lead sideways, upwards, downwards, it doesn't matter. But it really does help to pick up these soft skills and just adapt yourself. And what I would say is you refine these along the way as well. So you can start feeling like, oh, I might have 2 or 3 of these, but actually through the process of running a network, you can develop in all of these spaces. So there's a hell of a lot of benefits from just getting involved and running something. So what are some of the skills that you can pick up along the way? For those who have run a network, you know, are there any skills that surprised you? Any tools that you picked up that you didn't think you'd ever have to use?
And just while people are typing in, a few more answers came into the previous question, being open to ideas, having kind of some tools at your disposal, such as kind of tools around design thinking, for example, or brainstorming, making sure you've got a bit of an imagination, like you said, around creativity as well. I like this one as well. Maybe understanding and accepting of differences. So it might not be your way of doing things, but making sure everyone feels involved and changing and accepting others' points of view and seeing things from different angles.
Absolutely. Yeah. And through the process of running the network, and we'll get into this when we talk about skills you pick up along the way, you get a hell of a lot of feedback. It is amazing how challenging and value adding that looks. You have people who are potentially running a network that somewhat looks like yours, and they have a whole different worldview or a whole different approach on how they'd run it. And they will give you that feedback. And the main thing about receiving feedback is that you take it on board, you respond to it and thank the person, but you do not need to necessarily make every change that people come across with. And sometimes the feedback is just not the right time to install it. So you kind of put it away and you say, that's a really good challenge. I'll think about that. But my capacity at the time is this. Where would I feed that in? Is it the right time for me? So certainly being open to ideas, but knowing what's achievable, what might be too ambitious for the time, what skills do you have in place, what tools and resource, because you can be pulled into loads of different directions, and some of those can be incredibly inspiring. Some of them could be absolute red herrings for your efforts. So definitely take people's views on board, but no kind of use your terms of reference, use your what will good look like, that right to left planning, and think, will that take me to that direction? Can I continue down this path? Someone's responded, engaging in others' point of view better, different ways of working and sharing the workload. I don't know if there's any more in the chat, Zena.
Yeah, we've got exploring and testing, sharing knowledge, flexibility. So kind of not sticking to one route, but you know, that whole try something.
Yes. So I'm not sure I created an additional slide on this. For me, what I realized once I built a network is that when I started needing harder skills, project planning, statistical analysis, use of automation to make, my registrations more easy to do. So instead of clicking 300 people into my network, I found a way to automate it. When I needed those skills, I pulled upon the network and even their contacts to say, hey, look, I know that here we will absolutely be having project management, subject matter experts. I know that we have automation experts. Can I learn from you? Can I skill share for the things that I need? And the answer is yes. And if it's not that person, they might know a person. And so there's a huge power in running a network. Before, I didn't have any project delivery experience. I was given really basic tools that covered the basics, like huge recommendations for Project Canvas. It's getting your project on a page, being able to communicate it, understand your milestones, understand who needs to get involved, and being handed these things that other people are using in their day-to-day work that helps them excel in their subject matter expertise, and picking up and playing with it. And I think it's really brilliant. Like you don't need to have those skills in place. Your network can help you with that. And that might even empower people to come forward and offer you some of their resource and their time. I've had someone come along and build a power app for our innovation directory. So where you can't kind of exceed and excel into too fast a time, you can actually engage and encourage people to come on and say, do you mind spending a couple of hours of your time to do this for me? And I will learn along the way, and I'll try and work with you to understand it as we go. And that builds some resources that you wouldn't have started with. We've got agile leadership, use of new technology to engage members. Absolutely. I play around with so many collaboration tools and it's so fun. I do recommend it. We've got things like Trello, Menti, Miro came available. Yeah. Using it to help refresh membership, flexibility, accepting others' opinions. Brilliant. So there's still the development of your soft skills, but there's also those tools, techniques, and skill sets that you bring along the way. So, I did make a slide. So I ran an event. I did a review of my event. What did I pick up? Facilitation, briefing and drafting, collaboration, events management, project management, the ability and the practice of influencing senior leaders and kind of learning from that. Digital data and technology, use of collaboration software, marketing software, data analysis, and data packs. Communicating and engaging, creating rich pictures, using articles, blogs, posts. So there's a lot under each of these headings, but these are what I found just running an event. And that was the first event that I ran, and there was way more skills in the next one. So here's a few things that I picked up along the way. The activities that help sustain a network, I'm aware of time, so what I'll do is just discuss them, and you're more than welcome to just feed in through the chat. What are the activities that helped me sustain a network? My role, if I were to boil it down to what I do day to day as a network lead, I describe myself as a convener. I set those spaces. I create time in diaries for forums where people can talk. I spend a lot of time sharing opportunities that often, through the power of the network, come to me to then amplify outwards. I continue to network map. It should be a continuous process if you take it on. I manage registration, mainly through automation now. So if you haven't automated your registration to your network, I'd have a look into this. I use Power Automate through the Microsoft suite. I respond to queries that come through the inbox. And a lot of time it's being a conduit to connect others. So as a convener, I'm not necessarily the subject matter expert. I don't sit in a business area that I can necessarily help people as my daily role in terms of getting people the budget from my space. So I link them to people who have budget or have the ideas or have the skills. I run platforms to connect, so I use Microsoft Teams, have a SharePoint site. I created an innovation hub earlier this year that is actually organisationally facing, so you don't have to be a member of the network now to access it. And exploring future opportunities, so taking part in other innovation related events and opportunities and feeding in and imparting kind of your lessons learned to improve other spaces, and that again builds your network outwards. So a lot of what I do on a day-to-day can feel a little bit more like admin, but it's still networking, communicating, amplifying, creating that space, convening spaces. So if you're going to run a network, consider these in your activities. Zena, I don't know if there was any more in the chat.
Commitment, I think that's a really good one, actually, particularly when you're doing this over a sustained period of time. That commitment to your network, to innovation, to the organisation is key. I don't want to cut us too short, but we are already a few minutes over time. So I know everyone's still here. So that's a good sign that everyone's interested, Romo.
We're hugely close to the end. Thank you so much for listening. I do apologise for not being able to interact with the Zoom call. So the signals and measures of success. Essentially, you've got network membership. You've got people coming to you and bringing ideas. So your network might start off really quiet. People might not be talking, might not be using your platforms. But you if you keep creating the opportunities, creating the things, the tools, the spaces, the sessions that people draw to, it slowly increases people's confidence in what that space looks and feels like. And you start getting signals of people actually interacting, emailing your shared mailbox, communicating other opportunities that they think that you could share with your network. So these are really good signals and they don't come immediately. Scaling, the answer to scaling is like you've got your lessons learned, you try again. Has that shifted from its baseline onwards? And those are signals. A lot of your signals are interpersonal, but there is some data behind it. You have your stats of how many people came, how long they stayed for, etc. So think of that. Think about, am I reaching the right audience? Are they engaging with me? Can I make it easier for people to engage? Do I just continue on making these spaces and hoping people will come? The main thing is, when you run a network forum, you gain that feedback. You say, hey, does this forum work for you? Am I running it at the right time? How frequently do you want me to run it? And you'll get that feedback and you can play around with it. And I continue. For me, what I've set my cadence to with my network is 6 weekly. That might work for you, might not. but I keep testing it and I keep asking for feedback, and it's a continuous cycle. But the main signals of the network standing on its 2 feet is that you start actually having people come to you without you asking. And it's a really wonderful feeling when that starts happening. And that shows that your effort, all that effort that you put in, is coming back to you. So someone's popped here, more interactions, requesting to join the network, and an increase of idea submission, absolutely. Some of the ways that I harness a network are raising opportunities, asking people for help when I don't have the skill set, asking people to champion initiatives that are linked to what I do. So I've joined other initiatives, and I said, hey, I've got this network. I reckon if you ask a few people, through heads will pop up. Asking people for feedback, 2-minute feedback, asking people to user test your new data solutions or your automation solutions, making sure they're running, testing your platform, giving you feedback, getting diversity and accessibility feedback. Like, you could be using a whole color scheme that you don't know is going to work for people. So really, a lot of the ways you harness your feedback is through feedback. Harness your network is through feedback, is through those other connections. And actually, running an event, I haven't presented any sessions in any of the events that I've run. I've harnessed my network by getting people to talk about their own space, their own work, and it builds out a whole scheme of talks and conversations. So you can use those people and their connections and get them to open their little black books and tell you about their worlds, and it increases your sight of the organization. So what I'll do, I'll stop there. There's a hell of a lot in this, and I know that I've been rambling on for ages, but hopefully this gives you a sense of what it feels and looks like to run a network, where I started, what are some of the tools, the skills you need, and hopefully a bit of reassurance that you don't have to start in any particular space with any particular skill set. But yeah, hopefully that helps and might help you start in the right place in the first place. So, I'll hand back to you and I'll stop presenting.
Thank you so much. I appreciate we have run over time, but actually it's really interesting. I think the engagement using the Mentimeter was really fun too. It's not something we've done before on one of these calls, so thank you very much for trying it out, and thank you everyone for coming. Has anyone, I appreciate we've got literally about 2 minutes and we're already 15 minutes over, but are there any last questions for Romo before we go? Lots of thank yous coming in.
No, thanks all for joining, and I've learned a lot from all of you and your inputs onto the call, and that's why I use the collaborative platform, because I might be doing it very wrong, and your recommendations I can pick them up and take the responses back. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think on that point, we'll bring today's session to a close. Thank you to Romo and DEFRA, and lovely message in the chat, if you can see it now, Romo, about the fact that they thought somebody's recently joined your network and thought it had been going for years. It was that well established, and clearly your sessions are incredibly well attended. So you've achieved a great deal in a short amount of time. So thank you all for joining us. We will be skipping next month's session as the Ideas UK conference is on, so we hope to see many of you there. As mentioned, if you do or are interested in coming, you can either check out our website or email helen@ideasuk.com, and we'll be back for the final session of this year. Can you believe it? It still feels like summer almost, in December. So look forward to seeing a few of you then too. But for now, thank you and have a great day.
Huge thanks, Zena, for the opportunity. It's great to see you again.